there is a huge correlation to how Lake Okeechobee affects all of us. And so in hearing some of the hyperbole that was coming out, it basically scared a number of us around the lake. We heard that there was going to be a movement to try to artificially get Lake Okeechobee down to 10.5 feet. That in turn, I think, galvanized the boards around Lake Okeechobee to try to create a conversation so that we could come in a public forum and have a conversation like we're going to start tonight to voice our concerns and to make sure that our friends with the United States Army Corps of Engineers and South Florida Water Management District hear us loudly and clearly that we want to allow science and facts to drive that conversation as we move out of Lours and into Losom and the process that all entails. I know for a fact my staff got hammered pretty hard at Hendry County because when we asked for the agenda to be set, we had a number of our partners that wanted to add item after item after item, and as we all know, you give an elected official a mic and tell them to take off, and good Lord. And now we've done the unholy deed of giving them a mic and a camera, so thank you to Palm Beach County. With that being said, though, I felt that it was important that we have tonight's discussion in a laser-like focus about the Lake Okeechobee schedule, the levels of Lake Okeechobee. We have resident experts in the room. We're going to also take public comment. I would like to ask that everyone in the audience and all of my colleagues in front of me and to my left and right be respectful of the process. As it relates to public comment, I'd like to ask that we limit that to 2 minutes. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, I can run a meeting roughly, but we're not going to do that. We're in the heartland, so we're going to be mindful of that. And with that, I will hush until we get back around. I would like to ask, starting to my left, I don't want to introduce the mayor, but I would introduce Commissioner Terry Burrows, and I'll let you make a couple housekeeping items as it relates to people that are in this audience, this great audience with us. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Carson. In terms of housekeeping items, the restrooms are on your left and right as you entered the auditorium. We are proud to host this evening. Carson is graciously wanting to, has graciously been one of the people who wants to have this meeting, and we appreciate all the work that his staff has done in putting it together. So with that, Carson, I'll turn it back over to you.
I do want to say, he touches on a great point, and I'm going to hush here, I promise shortly. Been here my entire life. This is the first time that I know of the entire Lake community as it relates to elected officials have gathered up and have had a conversation as it relates to any issue. I think this is historic in perspective. So I'd like to recognize you all and thank you. My hope and wish is that this will not be the last time that we do this. And I look forward to these conversations as they progress. To my left, I have the Executive Director of South Florida Water Management, Mr. Drew Bartlett. Thank you so much for being here tonight, sir. Drew, would you like to say anything out the gate? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. And, I'm really excited to be here and part of this conversation. This is week 4 for me at the Water Management District, but I called you early, and as I've called many commissioners about engagement. And when I got the call this morning about coming up here and engaging, the answer was, of course, yes. So I very much look forward to the conversation and to hear about this incredible resource that we have, Lake Okeechobee, which I recognize personally as one of the beautiful features we have in the state of Florida. So I look forward to this great conversation.
And to my right, a lady that needs no introduction, but we are always going to be respectful of it, and someone that I've seen give countless presentations. And Lieutenant Colonel, I tell you this, and I've told you this on a number of occasions, I've learned a lot from you and how you handle the items that are thrown at you. I'll leave it at that. So Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Reynolds, if you'd like to have some opening remarks before we introduce everybody else.
Just thanks for having me. I look forward to a rather brief presentation and happy to answer any questions that the commissioners have.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Before I go ahead and go this way, I would also like to recognize Congressman Brian Mast has one of his chief aides in here, Steve Layton. Steve, you can stand up. I invited Steve over here. Steve, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate you, bud. Thank you so much. Commissioner Owens, if y'all would go ahead and start that way, and then we'll just go right up, right down, and right on around and finish with the board from Hendry.
Commissioner Kelly Owens, Okeechobee County.
Commissioner David Hazelleaf, Okeechobee County.
Commissioner Bryant Culpepper, Okeechobee County.
Commissioner Brad Goodbread, Okeechobee County.
All right.
Nice to make an entrance. Commissioner Robert Weinroth, Palm Beach County.
Commissioner Hal Balashade, Palm Beach County.
Commissioner Greg Weiss, Palm Beach County.
Vice Mayor Dave Kerner, Palm Beach County.
Commissioner Mary Lou Berger, also Palm Beach County.
Good evening, Commissioner Melissa McKinley, Palm Beach County. Also get to serve as Carson's Vice Chair of the 16 County Coalition, and I want to thank all the folks who came in from Belglade, South Bay, Pahokee, and the surrounding areas for being here tonight.
Mayor Mac Bernard, the mayor for Palm Beach County, where we have over 1.5 million residents, and the issues in regards to the lake is vital to Palm Beach County in regards to the lake level, potential drought, and also I represent the city of West Palm Beach, and so we're really concerned about how lowering the lake can impact the city of West Palm Beach.
Tim Stanley, Glades County Commissioner.
John A. Hearn, Glades County Commissioner.
Donald Strank, Glades County Commissioner.
Stacy Hetherington, Commissioner for Martin County.
Harold, Commissioner, Martin County.
Doug Smith, Martin County Commissioner.
Ed Campy, Commissioner for Martin County, and captain of our spelling bee team.
It's just beginning.
Yes, it's just beginning. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill McDaniel, Collier County Commissioner.
Darrell Harris, Henry County.
Bird, Henry County.
Mitchell Wills, Hendry County.
We'll jump right into the presentation just for you all too. We did invite.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I'm sure you all be in agreement, but could we?
My man, I like it so much, Commissioner. Thank you so much. If everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Outstanding. We're going to go ahead and receive the presentation from Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Reynolds at this time.
Okay, so I really appreciate the opportunity to go through some slides. I recognize that with the lighting in here, it might be difficult to see some of these slides. So I'm sure there's a way that I will also make this presentation available to folks online so that we can put it on the different county websites or also on our website with the Corps so that people can look at these later. All right, I'm already failing at moving the slideshow. Okay, so everyone's familiar with the Everglades in general, and it's no surprise to anyone in this audience the vast expanse of what people refer to as the Everglades. This is an area that's twice the size of the state of New Jersey, encompasses over 9 million acres of lakes and wetlands and rivers. Water flowed all the way from the headwaters near Orlando down to Florida Bay. It's a unique habitat, not just one habitat, but over 13 specific ecosystems that comprise a mosaic of different habitats that's home to over 68 endangered and threatened species. It's also home to a whole lot of people. And so we have a multi-pronged problem. It's not that water is a problem. We all need water. People need water, the habitats need water, the wildlife needs water, our aquifers need water. And our oceans need that freshwater inflow off of the landscape to keep all of our estuaries healthy all along the central and southern Florida coasts. But we have a quantity, quality, timing, and distribution problem that's been the result of decades of people moving into the landscape and using these amazing resources, but not always doing it in a way that we understood all of the unintended consequences of draining some of the landscape to make it usable for different purposes. So on the left is a satellite image that portrays the historic Everglades south of Lake Okeechobee. And on the right, the image shows the amount of development that has crept into the areas that used to be able to hold a whole lot of water. So what does that mean? It means that water used to naturally overflow the banks of Lake Okeechobee and flow southward in a very slow way. There's a whole lot of people that live in those floodplains now, including me. So I live in one of those floodplains, right about there. And a whole lot of other people live in the floodplains all around here. And we have a lot of needs for all of that water. So historically, between 52 and 60 inches of water fell from the sky. Today, about 52 to 60 inches of water fall from the sky. But we don't have all of this floodplain for it to sit on the landscape. And we have really great flood protection. In 2017, after Hurricane Irma, we had the same amount of rainfall that caused the massive flooding in the 1940s that precipitated a lot of the flood control projects that we have on the landscape today. But we didn't have people's homes flooding like we did in 1947. In 1947, areas just west of Fort Lauderdale stayed underwater for 6 months. We didn't have that kind of flooding in 2017 because the flood control system works. What doesn't work is all of the unintended consequences of our flood control system where we're flushing the fresh water out and it's not available to the folks, the ecosystems, the aquifers that need that freshwater supply throughout the year. So it's a timing problem. And so we have a series of very significant federal and state projects that work together to solve this problem. So the greatest problem that I see in many of the conversations is often they start out as a myth of competition. Can we have people living here and a natural landscape side by side? We can. Can we have natural ecosystems and agriculture and ranching? We can. We absolutely can. We don't have a problem of oysters versus bass. What's good for oysters is the same thing that's good for bass. Everglades restoration is good for the snail kite and good for the sparrow. It's good for the coasts and it's good for the lake. It's good for agriculture. It's good for the environment. It's good for flood protection. It's also good for water supply. It's good for development and it's good for tourism. It's good for our coasts. It's good for our estuaries. And it's good for Lake Okeechobee. And only by working together are we going to continue to move towards finishing the projects that actually solve the problem. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the lake itself. I know almost nobody in the audience is going to be able to read this spaghetti chart. The commissioners have all probably seen this before. The different colored lines on this chart represent the lake levels over different years over the past decade. The black solid lines that move from the left to the right of the chart are the current Lake Okeechobee schedule. This is the regulation schedule by which the Corps of Engineers and the South Florida Water Management District work together to look at how different effects of environmental conditions like rainfall, evapotranspiration, and runoff affect the lake levels. And we use the Lake Okeechobee Regulation Schedule, currently LORS 08, to manage the lake. And we operate the lake between these bands. We call from this line here to this line here is all the operational band. The period of record, which is how we did the modeling for LORS 08, included looking at all of the years that we have records for. And so that's over 4 decades worth of data, and we modeled what the effects between rainfall, evapotranspiration, runoff, and water supply releases are on the lake. We have an excess of fresh water available in the lake. And the problem is when the lake starts to get too high, it becomes a safety problem for the people who live and work around Lake Okeechobee. And the reason that that's important is because we've had devastating hurricanes, which is why we built the Herbert Hoover Dike, is to protect the communities that are in this area, all around the lake. Because when we see lake levels start to approach 16 feet and lake levels over 17 feet, we start to see active failure of the Herbert Hoover Dike. That's why we're doing repairs to the Herbert Hoover Dike and we're making it safe for people to live and work around Lake Okeechobee. Because we don't ever want to see a catastrophe like we had in the 1920s where thousands of people perished because of hurricanes that went right over Lake Okeechobee, causing massive immediate flooding. So, some people think that that's no longer a problem. I can tell you that in Hurricane Irma, which was a pretty minor hit in terms of its proximity to the lake, we had over a 10-foot differential between one side of the lake and the other side of the lake. So we had a storm surge of over 10 feet on Lake Okeechobee just from Hurricane Irma. Yes. Yeah, so a differential between 11 feet and 21 feet is what we saw on Lake Okeechobee as a result of the winds from Hurricane Irma. So what have we been doing with the lake this year, and how is that different from the LOSOM effort? Over the past 6 years, so 6 of the last 7 years, Lake Okeechobee has gone over 16 feet. When we did the modeling in the LORS 08 to develop the schedule, that wasn't typical. The lake didn't normally get that high that frequently. And we saw significant impacts on the lake ecology and on the ecology of the 2 northern estuaries, out the Caloosahatchee River and out the St. Lucie River, as a result of having to make a lot of freshwater releases because of the lake being so high, particularly the last 3 years. And so this is just a representative illustration of those extremes on Lake Okeechobee over the last 3 years. So as an example, we had over 40,000 acres of seagrass, aquatic vegetation, of grasses in Lake Okeechobee prior to 2016. At the beginning of 2016, we were down to 33,000 acres. That was a high water year, and what we saw by the beginning of 2017 was that amount was down to 20,000 acres in the lake. After Hurricane Irma, we had only 5,000 acres of grasses left in Lake Okeechobee. That's a really significant impact on the lake ecology, on the habitat for the species that live in the lake, and for the water quality in the lake. Likewise, we were seeing really significant impacts to both northern estuaries. And so the Corps worked with scientists from the Water Management District as well as many of the state and federal agencies and decided to look at, because what we had modeled in LORS 08 and what had happened over the last, especially 3 years, but 6 years total, was not typical. Did we have any flexibility to manage the water a little bit differently this dry season in order to do what we could for the ecologies of both the northern estuaries and the lake itself? And so we used some operational flexibility to make sure that we got the lake levels down to below 12 feet, not to 10.5 feet. We never tried to bring the lake to 10.5 feet. But we did want to see the lake below 12 feet, because what our scientists were telling us is that below 12 feet is what would allow the grasses to be able to germinate, that enough sunlight would be able to get to enough lake bottom to allow those grasses to regerminate and grow during the beginning of this dry season. So that's what we did. We sent small amounts of fresh water throughout the dry season to both estuaries at a time prior to the oyster spawning and in pulse fashion. And we watched and monitored very closely what we were seeing with the habitats and the ecology in both northern estuaries and in the lake. So our plan was to always stay within the operational band, to manage and monitor things very closely, and take advantage of the opportunity to do as much as we could to build resiliency in those three ecosystems. So we were monitoring everything we could think of, and we were trying to take advantage of doing whatever additional operations like burning on Lake Okeechobee that would be good for the habitat. And so we did a lot of those things. So how were we doing? We started to see a lot of those grasses germinate in Lake Okeechobee. We were seeing wading birds being very successful in areas in the Kissimmee River and in the marsh areas of Lake Okeechobee. We kept salinities within their ideal ranges in both estuaries, but we didn't make everybody happy because the lake got pretty low, and that's not good for everybody, and we recognize that. And so we were watching very closely, and we understand that nothing we do is going to make everybody happy. But this was a reasonable amount of water we felt in order to protect the health of Lake Okeechobee. And what we were hearing from all of the experts about weather forecasts was that there was not a risk of drought this year because of the weather patterns that they were seeing. And so that was why we felt that this was the best opportunity we had in order to build resiliency in those ecosystems without the risk of going into a drought. Could we have gotten it wrong? Yes. Could we still have it wrong? Yes. Because we can't predict exactly what Mother Nature is going to do, and we all know that when we try to count on it too much, we get it wrong every time. And so as we approach that lower band of the operational band, we started releasing less and less water. And so that's where we are today, and we've been fortunate to see some rainfall start coming from the sky. And so we hit a low of the lake, I think, at 11.17, and now we've seen the lake start to rise again. I think we're at 11.24 today. So the most significant impact on the lake at this time of year is rainfall and ET, evapotranspiration. And so what we are doing in terms of releases from the lake really does not make a significant difference on the lake levels at this time of year. What makes the most significant difference is what Mother Nature does. And so we did what we could during the early part of the dry season to build resiliency in these ecosystems, and we hope that history shows that this was successful for those ecosystems to build some resiliency. So we continue to manage the lake under LORS 08 while we proceed with the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual schedule. I appreciate that a lot of folks in this room attended the scoping meetings. We received over 8,000 written comments and over 1,500 verbal comments during those meetings. So it's taking us a little more time than we had anticipated to sift through all of that and make sure that we get that available for people to review. But we are moving forward with some public webinars. So we're going to do these during lunchtime. I originally had the dates for these on my slides, and then we ran into a hiccup with some of the technology because we want to make sure that we don't have a limit for the number of people who can participate on the webinars. And so it's going to take us another couple days to sort that out. But we're looking at later in this month in order to start these, and so we'll do a couple a week. But these will be at lunchtime. We'll dedicate about an hour. It'll be about a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll take questions by email or by chat and answer questions about 6 different topics: the CNSF project itself, dam safety in the Herbert Hoover Dike, water management, lake ecology, the Kissimmee River restoration, and estuary ecology. I would be remiss if I didn't give you a quick update on the Herbert Hoover Dike. So work continues on the Herbert Hoover Dike. We've recently awarded the first of our cutoff wall task orders, and so this next part of cutoff wall right here, the construction on that will start very soon, and that work is still scheduled to be completed in 2022, thanks to the cooperative effort of everybody in this room getting that fully funded under the supplemental program, and so moving that forward to completion in 2022 from 2025. And the thing that I just wanted to leave you with is that, again, we can't operate our way out of this problem, the problem that I talked about at the beginning. What solves this problem is really a comprehensive set of projects that is part of the 50-50 partnership between the federal government and the state, but also has components of everything that local governments do all across the board in order to make sure that we get the quantity, quality, timing, and distribution of our greatest resource, the fresh water that we have, into this system where it belongs, when it belongs there, to the benefit of not just the ecosystems, but all the people that live and work in our great state. Thank you.
All right. With that, I do want to follow up with the goal that I've kind of set in my mind's eye coming out of here tonight. Initially was a joint resolution, which, as usual, I found out you can't do it because it's illegal. So what I'm hoping is that we will take language back from tonight's discussion. Each individual board can mull over creating their own resolution. Past that, obviously work hand in glove with your municipalities that are located in your county as this issue affects them. And make sure that we share this message with our federal partners. I know a number of you that I'm looking at right now, we've worked together up on the Hill in D.C. to make sure that, you know, whether it was funding for different projects, and going up there and absolutely, you know, making people's minds become destroyed whenever they see a commissioner from Martin County walking in and holding a hand with a commissioner from Henry County, and they're like, "Wait, I thought you guys couldn't talk with each other." And we're like, "No, actually, we're quite good friends, and we're wanting you to hear that this is the message that we're wanting to see pushed out the door." And I think that this kind of an audience coming together and sharing that, science driving the discussion, hearing 40 years of history that allowed us to arrive at LORS 08. And now as we move into the LOSUM program and taking, once again, all of these different variables into consideration, I want to see us consider that joint resolution. I also want to create a situation, because I can tell you right now, when Hendry County invites our single congressional leader and both of our federal senators, it doesn't really have nearly the pop as when Palm Beach County or Martin County starts talking to the horses that you all have representing you. And so, when you all as the commission start asking for the Everglades Caucus to come down to Florida and talk with us on our own turf, in our own backyard, I think that it has a lot more energy behind it. So I would like to throw that challenge out there as well. And then, once again, always skirting around and playing in the world of gray, doesn't mean we can't necessarily put a letter together that has all of our logos at the top of it, and that we serve that up. Once again, I'm sure some attorney somewhere will tell me that that's not proper, and we'll work through that. But with that, I want to open it up to comments from everybody. Commissioner Burrows, if you'd like to go ahead, and then we'll just go around. Y'all pull it out, we'll find you.
Well, thank you, Carson. First of all, I'd like to thank the Lieutenant Colonel for giving an excellent presentation. I know that a lot of the commissioners have seen this before, but I'm not sure a lot of the participants in the audience have seen that. So thank you very much for that. Carson and I had a long conversation about this particular presentation and this particular meeting this morning, and his comments were that, what was the expectation that I had out of this particular meeting? And one of the things that come about is that when I attended the first meeting at the South Florida Water Management Workshop, I posed a question to the Lieutenant Colonel. When could we start looking at storage on north of the lake in order to slow this flow down? And my good friend Gary Ritter pulled me aside and said, listen, you need to get an education on what happens on north of the lake. So he sat down with me a couple weeks ago and we talked about this. And one of the things I would like to say tonight is that I'm supportive, as Commissioner Turner talked to me about it this morning, of completing this C-23, C-24, 43, 44, those types of things that are part of the SERP as it is. What I'm more supportive in terms of expanding the geographical footprint for SERP to include the headwaters of the Kissimmee River and start figuring out how can we slow the water coming down to Lake Okeechobee. So it really comprises of two things. One, it slows the flow. Two, it allows the water itself, or allows the lake to regenerate itself a little bit better. And it also probably provides some relief to both East and West Coast in terms of these particular discharges, which has annoyed our friends on both coasts. And as I stated in the FAC Water Policy Committee, Okeechobee County and all the counties that surround the lake, we want to be part of the solution as much as our compadres in Osceola County, as we know that they sit on the 9-county coalition. So that's kind of where I would I'd like to see us at least tackle that portion of it. I know it's a long-range plan, but at least if we don't start now, we're never going to get to the end game. So.
Commissioner McKinley?
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. I think what I hope to get out of this evening is what can we all agree on. And there has been, over the past few years, a whole lot of finger pointing, different parts of the communities represented here, blaming other parts of the communities represented here. And I think that we could all agree on that the end result is something we all want, and that is a cleaner lake, cleaner estuaries, and a cleaner river. I think the difference in opinion starts with how do we get there? And so I hope that this opens up the door for more friendly conversations about how we get to that end result. I'd certainly like to recognize Representative Carrie Pigman as I think the sole legislator in the room this evening for recognizing that 2 weeks ago during the budget conversations in Tallahassee and finally putting some resources into storage projects north of the lake. So thank you, Representative Pigman, for that. But we need to stop the rhetoric, And I think pulling us all around the table as the leaders in these local communities will help put a stop to that. If we can all have a friendly handshake and say, let's quit blaming each other. You know, it's as much Walt Disney's fault as it is historical farming practices that happened some 40 years ago, you know, to some of the other things, the development. Every single one of us that owns a home in these communities plays a role in what happened and what's happening to our environment. You know, as Lieutenant Colonel points out, she lives in Wellington, Florida, like I do. That was swampland some 50, 60 years ago, and it's now a suburban community in central Palm Beach County, home to more than 50,000 people. It's that historical growth we've seen and over a system that was built between the Great Hurricane in 1928 and completed in 1964 when we had 5 million people living in Florida. We now have 23 million people and more than 100 million people passing through just Orange and Osceola counties each year alone. You can't manage a system that was built in 1964 to 2019 standards. We will never see that historic flow happen again. And so we all need to work together to advocate that Congress in particular help fund their fair share of these projects. The state has really stepped up and done more of the heavy lifting over the past few years. So I'm happy that Mr. Layton is in the room and can carry that message back. We all need to be encouraging the White House that their proposal falls about $140 million short in what we wanted to see this year, and hoping that the president can up the ante on some of those requests. He certainly has the power to do that. And then local governments, every one of us. I know I've got the mayor of Belglade is here, the former mayor of BOCC is here. Security is monitoring him. Don't worry about that. Just kidding, JP. We love you. Newly elected City Commissioner Regina Boland from Pahokee is here. We've got a huge team from Palm Beach County. I know we've got City of Okeechobee officials and City of Clewiston, I believe, just a whole bunch of municipal and county employees here in the room that also bear a huge responsibility in making sure that we're taking care of our own infrastructure at home. And I know there's some folks in here that don't like to hear the word septic tank. Some of these issues that we're dealing with also relate to aging septic tanks. I'm not saying replace every one of them, but inspect them and make sure they're operating properly. You know, we need to take care of our own infrastructure back at home and make sure our sewage treatment plants and our lift stations and all of that good infrastructure is not falling apart and contributing to the problem. Stormwater runoff. I know the Glade cities had numerous budget requests before the legislature this year to fund stormwater improvements. You know, despite some of the rhetoric we've heard, our agricultural community south of the lake is not back pumping into the lake. If you've seen any back pumping over the past few years, it has been because the cities of Belglade, South Bay, and Pahokee, when we have a heavy rain, they flood. They start flooding those folks' homes and their businesses, and less than 3% of the water that went into the lake, I believe in 2017, actually came from back pumping, but it's because those cities, the infrastructure is failing. We need to make those investments at home. So if we come out of here with anything tonight, it's that we all need to go and do our homework in our backyard. We need to put the rhetoric behind and show our communities that we are all working together because we all want a cleaner lake. We want a cleaner Caloosahatchee and St. Lucie, you know, canals, rivers, whatever you want to call them. We want cleaner estuaries, and also it's not just, you know, over in Lee County. It's not just Martin County and the Indian River Lagoon. It's the Lake Worth Lagoon in Palm Beach County as well. We've spent millions of dollars improving the infrastructure there and trying to clean that up. I don't want to see that system blown out and those dollars put to waste. So I would actually like to ask to make sure that we're monitoring the Lake Worth Lagoon as well moving forward. But basically my comments, let's just all start working together and show that by all being here, sitting side by side with Martin County, and we've got a commissioner from Collier County here, that we all agree that we just want a healthier environment. We can start working together to push these projects to make that happen. So Lieutenant Colonel, we're going to miss you when you leave later this year. Thank you for all your hard work over the year. Commissioner Turner, it's a pleasure to serve with you, and I think that we will certainly at least on our end, make a request to the Everglades Caucus to host a meeting somewhere in this vicinity to have that conversation. I think that's an excellent idea.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Another item that I would like to point out that I didn't touch on, that's just come to me, is, as you all know, a number of you sat in the water policy conference with the Florida Association of Counties. I know that our good friends in the legislature, correct me if I'm wrong, Representative Pigman, but you all have created a South Florida Water Management District Water Caucus as well. We would love to invite you all to our annual conference in June in Orlando. That's really like tomorrow, but we're hoping that a handful of you all will. And I am hoping also that this issue is front and center in that policy conference as we move those conversations forward from a statewide basis as it relates to the entire peninsula. You know, right out of the gate, we split it kind of in half with a northern discussion and a southern discussion. And I think, once again, this needs to be one of those principles that rises to the top of that chat. Executive Director Bartlett, if your schedule permits, we would love to have you come in and be a part of that discussion with us as well. I think you will enjoy it. So, yes, sir. Commissioner Owens, did you want to?
Thank you. First, I do want to thank Commissioner Turner and Commissioner McKinley, because when about a month and a half ago I started reaching out, I think I reached out to Commissioner Turner first in regards to putting this type of meeting together and saying that we needed to have a common focus, which you referred to, Commissioner McKinley. It does need to be a common focus, and this is the start of it, and I hope that this is the start of many meetings yet to come with all of us finding what that focus is and then moving forward from there. There are other side issues that are going to come of it, and we know that, but we need to start with this one area, and I think starting with the level of the lake as that common focus is the most appropriate place to start. Commissioner McKinley, I wanted to reach out to you because you were on your way traveling to D.C. when I reached out to you, and I said, I heard that you have a resolution that you are working on, and can you please send it to me so we can get our board to do the same? And so I thank you and your staff for doing that, because we have since moved forward in Okeechobee County, and I think probably every county represented in this room has already adopted a resolution in terms of taking a stand on the level of the lake as well as other lake issues. Slowing the flow from the north end, I think, is critical, and I think that probably needs to be one of the pieces in the letter that I'm hoping we can put together. I hope it's not illegal, Commissioner Turner, to do the letter, because when you said joint resolution, that's what I was hoping for us to have prepared this evening. So knowing we can't do that, then the next thought certainly is to put a letter together. Mayor Bernard, you talked at the beginning about the $1.5 million in Palm Beach County that rely on the water from the lake. And I know what you were specifically aiming for in that point is that to lower the lake to 10.5 feet and keep it there is not viable. There's not just the Palm Beach County residents, but there are far more in Broward County and beyond that rely on Lake Okeechobee if a drought occurs. And Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds made it very clear that the expectation this year is that there will not be a drought, and I think the timing to do what you did in terms of the burning on the lake and trying to get the grasses to germinate was admirable. The fear is that once it's brought down to 10.5, that it will be maintained there, and I think our voices need to be heard loud and clear in this room tonight that that is not viable, it's not appropriate for this lake, and that needs to be probably one of the key points in the letter as well. There is a shared adversity that predicated the coalition, the 16-county coalition being put together, and that has kind of been thrown around and laughed at a little bit when it's brought up, but I assure you, shared adversity is real. And so we need to be sure that everybody understands what that means, all of us in this room, and that we understand the impact that keeping the lake at 10.5 feet will have. It's not just ag. It is South Florida that is seriously impacted by that. And I don't think we want to mess with Mother Nature and just assume that because this is a drought year that we can get by with maintaining the lake at that level. I was on a federal conference call, I think that was probably about a month and a half ago, Commissioner McKinley, and had the opportunity, a number of us did, to make some of these points when we were on that call with the White House. Commissioner McKinley was able to speak, as was I, and I have not had the follow-up at the federal level that I have asked for. And so, again, it makes it that much more important for all of us to have a common voice and to stay together and be focused on what our message is and move forward collectively so that the health of the lake and all of the communities surrounding the lake is the top priority, and keeping in mind that that also means all of the people in South Florida who do rely in times of need on this lake.
Thank you, Commissioner Owens. Thank you very much. Commissioner Campy from Martin County, and followed by Commissioner Smith. And before you go, Commissioner, we're at 6:55 right now, so I do want to
About a
have
half an
time
hour.
for public comments. That's it.
Put me down for 15. Commissioner Smith's yielding his time to me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're very happy to have this opportunity to come and meet with you all. What many of you don't realize is that the commissioners that are here on the stage and right here in the front of the stage, like Carson had said, many of us are really very close friends. We work very well together. So I don't think in any of the political entities we have any kind of an adversarial relationship. And that's a great start for all of us, because if your elected officials don't get along, then it's going to just trickle down into the communities. Now, we've all been, many of the folks in this room that took the time to come out tonight, we have all been to Army Corps scoping meetings and had opportunity to send information in and hear this information. A lot of what we heard tonight is not new. But what is new is that, like we've heard before, that we've gotten together as a group of counties. There's a lot of talk about shared adversity, and I'd like to be able to switch that conversation to mutually beneficial. That's a real possibility for all of us. We have had, as counties, all of the counties that are represented here tonight, we have invested millions of dollars, your dollars, on projects to somehow stem what has been inevitable for us. All of the counties represented tonight have suffered environmental harm. Residents have suffered harm. Our agricultural businesses have suffered harm. So we get it. That's why you're here tonight. And I think when we speak as a universal voice, that's very helpful. But beyond just having the commissioners come together, most of us, most of the county governments, we also have fantastic resources available to us in our staff. Our professional staff, many of them are experts in their fields. And just as we're collaborating tonight, and I know many of the our commission employees in Martin work collaboratively with their colleagues in other counties. But I think we as commissioners can sort of sound again the desire that each of our employee bases, our experts that live in the communities that we're talking about, that they work together. There's no reason that Glades or Hendry should be spending additional money recreating work that Palm Beach and Martin counties already worked on. So I think one of the things we need to leave here tonight with is the fact that, you know, at the top we're going to work together, our staffs will work together, and as communities we'll work together. I was in Stewart at Indian River State College when the Army Corps came to do some of their comments. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people. And what I was really happy about is that many of the folks from these communities here along the lake had also made the drive east to come and see us. And they were, as you can imagine, very respectful, very polite. They talked about multiple generations of their families that have lived and worked and earned their living along the lake. And I'll tell you from my personal perspective, and many of the people that I know, I represent Palm City. We have the new Village of Indiantown Commission is here. We have the folks from Jupiter Island are here. We have a couple of folks from the city of Stewart. So we're in this all together. But what I'll tell you is no farming, no food. And we understand that on the East Coast. So those of us on the coast, if you will, we understand what you're up against. You're feeding us, and we appreciate it. So I think, and we heard it just briefly, and I'll end with this. We're trying everything we can here, but all of us know that the volume of water that comes into the lake from the north is something that we can never, ever control east and west, or even sending it south. And I haven't heard in all of my conversations, and I'm not bashing our neighbors to the north, but I would love to hear, and maybe when we have our next meeting, we hear from folks up north, what are they doing? How many millions of dollars are they investing? How are their businesses and their environments being hurt? It's very easy to send the water south. That's been a rally cry here, especially on the Treasure Coast. But when they say that up in Orlando and in Orange County, it's very easy to send it to us, and they don't have any shared adversity with us at all. So I think that whatever we're trying to do here, someone said you can't mess with Mother Nature. I agree. But the center of the state is, we've heard, 100 million tourists go through that area every year. They are not struggling with budgets to figure out what they need to do up that way. So I think that as a collective voice, we need to be hearing a lot more of what's happening north of us, because we can't just continue to handle all of the water that they just decide to send our way. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith, you'll go right in. Sir.
So I get 3 minutes from his 20?
Yes, sir.
I yield the remainder of my time.
Oh, set. So a couple thoughts. 20 years ago, plus or minus, there we go, sorry about that. We formed the I guess that. Can you hear that now? Sorry. We started the coalition of counties around the lake. For the
Give him another mic.
You used up all the power, Ed. The idea behind that was to really bring the collective wisdom of the elected officials around the lake together to have a conversation as to what was in the best interest for all of us. Years later, that grew into an idea of bringing 16 counties together. And the reason for doing that was that, as different commissioners have said it in different ways this evening, if we had a collective voice and we were all on the same page and we could keep us at the same page, the representation of what those 16 counties make up for all of us, or you in the audience, is enormous. And there's absolutely no reason why South Florida and its 16 counties can't stay together at the 40,000-foot level. And we tried really hard not to get into the weeds. We didn't want to get down into dictating a project-by-project sort of an idea. It was more stay at 40,000 feet and say, where can we find consensus among those 16 counties? Because I will tell you, for the 20 years I've been doing this, all Washington needs is for us to start arguing amongst ourselves. There are plenty of places to put funds and revenue in other parts of the country. When we're not all on the same page and we're not all pulling together in the same direction, it's a really easy distraction for them to do something different. And so for me, if there's any takeaway this evening, it's for all of us sitting certainly at the tables and the others that aren't here, to make sure that we keep that absolutely to the core of everything that we do. To keep those 16 counties talking the same story, the same language, the same ideas. When we all go to DC or we go to Tallahassee, we've got to say the same thing. Because if there's any distraction from that, it's too easily picked off. And that's what happens. There are other big projects around the country. The Lieutenant Colonel could probably rattle off 3 or 4 of the top big ones that, rest assured, if South Florida is arguing amongst ourselves, they're more than happy to put that off for 3 or 4 years until we get our act put together and come back and get organized again. To Commissioner Campy's question relative to north of the lake, we have Commissioner Grebe from Osceola County that sits on our 16-county coalition group with us. Almost every meeting, Melissa, I'm fairly certain it's almost every meeting, she brings up the idea that they want to be more included. They want Osceola County at the table. They want to talk about projects. They want to have their footprint included in what we're talking about. And so to the greatest extent that we can bring that conversation more to the forefront, the better for all of us. A handful of us have talked about this evening that we need to have more opportunity north of the lake. Fantastic. And absolutely Osceola County, I have no doubt to the extent that Orange County plays in that discussion, they would be more than willing to talk to us about that as well. But if there was anything I would leave you all with tonight, keeping us together, your 16 elected officials from the 16 counties that make up the South Florida Water Management District, that's the core. The core, for me anyway, the core is to keep us together, pick out those 3 or 4 top priorities. Look what we achieved, if you really think about it, in the last 2 or 3 years with the Herbert Hoover Dike. We accelerated that by 3 years.
Yes, sir.
We got that done. That was because that was the #1 priority of the 16-county coalition put forward. Even though we didn't prioritize them as number 1, 2, 3, and 4, that has been on the project list the entire time. And every one of us that went to DC and lobbied and worked for that said the same exact thing and continued on that discussion. And so Carson and Terry and all those that have helped Melissa and others that put this together this evening, thank you. And I would invite you all to come to our 16 or 9-county coalition meeting, whichever one we have when we do them. And Drew, thank you for being here and being part of the Water Management District. We have a great partner with Drew from DEP, and he brings a ton of experience with him. And Colonel, we will miss you. It is a terrible thing that you'll be leaving us, and it'll take us years to train somebody new, but I guess we'll get used to it. Anyway, Carson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to deny her.
Second.
We are going to start that discussion of we're going to get some great tutoring too from some people that have sat in these seats on how we can stop them from leaving us every 730 days, although everybody tells me I'm crazy for even contemplating that. That's just the way of the military. I disagree. Anyone else? Commissioner Stanley in Glades County?
With us being Glades County, we agree that there is a problem with the lake, and we're willing to help do whatever it is, but we're such a small county. We've been sitting and waiting for the coast to fill up so that we could develop our county, and now all of a sudden they want to turn us into a water storage area, you know? So it's like, we don't mind doing the storage, but compensate us some way. We've been trying to do this bed tax thing through the legislature, trying to get some kind of compensation. When you come and buy 5,000 acres and take it off the tax rolls and we get PILT money for it, it's not worth what it could be industry. I mean, right now we're talking about Bass Pro coming in and they want to put a reservoir right on the prime area where there would be a hotel or something, you know. So we're all in this together and we're willing to do whatever we can, but compensate us some way for the land that you buy up. Because when I hear North Storage, all I see is Glades County turning into a duck pond.
Commissioner Ahern?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Commissioner Stanley said as far as the storage problem. I mean, our land's being taken from us, and we do need to be compensated for it. But we appreciate that everybody working together on our project. We have a problem, and we're dealing with it. Commissioner Turner, we appreciate the committee that you've put together through the Association of Counties, and we're working there, the 16-county coalition working, and I think as long as all of us are working together, we're on the same page, and we recognize we have a problem, and I think that Mr. Owens saying, we know we can't maintain the lake at 10.5 foot. It has to be at a higher level, but we're certainly all in this together and going to work together on it and do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Culpepper?
Yes, I've got involved with this thing when this whole green algae, cyanobacteria, got out for kind of probably what would be considered a selfish reason. My great-grandfather, Baxter Culpepper, was the first farmer on Torrey Island in Lake Okeechobee in 1909. They moved here from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and was moved off of it in 1917 and down to Boynton. So I fished that lake from the time my hand would fit around a cane pole. So I happened to have quite a, emotional connection to Lake Okeechobee. So I started doing some research, and I will tell you I'm not a PE, I'm not an engineer, but I have a lot of experience of, problems with the lake. I was chairman of the Water Control District in Loxahatchee Groves, which is the oldest platted subdivision in the state of Florida. What I found was a lot of interesting things. And by the way, the comment about Orlando, I am honored to have been asked to speak to a big group in Orlando because they are concerned and they feel the fingers are being pointed at them, and they are concerned and they want to know what they can do to help. So there really is an effort on the part of Orlando to try to see what we can figure out. What I found out was, and by the way, I live on the Kissimmee River, now where the outfall is into the Pool D, I believe it is. And so I see a lot of things going on. The water's as low as I've seen it there since I moved here in 2003. And that's created, some pretty serious problems. I know as I drive home down 98 through the love bug capital of the world, I think, and when I can see through the windshield, I notice that there are a lot of the farms, their ponds are all dried up where their cattle drink from. So that's becoming a very serious issue as well, So the biggest thing I found out was, and I did start doing some research, and I enlisted the help of one of our local engineers, very, very good man, because I wanted to run some ideas by him. And it was mentioned by the lieutenant colonel, the word silt, okay? The problem is when I started doing the research and looking up the river all the way to Orlando, most of the water control structures were open from the bottom up. Well, that creates a problem because the very idea of grass growing in the lake can't grow in silt that has chemicals in it like Roundup. Can't happen. So what we have to look at is how do we stop the silt? Well, what I mentioned to him was, why couldn't we take those structures, put in horseshoe weir structures, and set the top of that structure at the level that you want to keep the maximum water level at? Because what that does is two things. It only allows the clean fresh water that comes from rain to flow over it and down the river. What it does, it traps the silt at the bottom. So every 5-10 years, you go out and you measure the silt. And when it gets to the point where it's several feet below the top, you go in with equipment, you clean it out, and you haul it off to the landfill. Problem gone. So I think many times, I'm not a scientist, but what I do is I kind of look for the easy solutions. And one of the things that I saw happen, and believe me, I'm not going to say any names, but when we purchase $50 million worth of properties from people, and then the properties are never used, that's money that could be put in there. And one of the things that came to me in the last couple of days was a pretty interesting idea. We talked about septic tanks, okay? Well, Clemson University did a study that says that septic tanks should be drained at least every 5 years and no longer, because the solids build up inside and then all the waste just goes straight out the other side of the tank and into the drain field where it's then washed into the water, okay, the nitrogen, phosphates, whatever. So if we look at creative ideas, such as taking that $50 million or whatever it costs and put that into a fund where people can get a voucher, because we have a lot of people, in our area that are on fixed incomes. Social Security, they may get $1,200 a month. That's a big expense for them. But if we offered them vouchers to go in and clean those tanks out, that would have a big impact. We've even gone farther here in Okeechobee, and we're outlining now running water and sewer systems to the people that are close to the canals. We have a lot of canals and areas, Treasure Island, Taylor Creek Isles. Taylor Creek Isles is already on septic tank and well. on municipal water system. So I think if you just look a little bit, and I'm not pointing and blaming anybody because it's not productive. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think a lot of people don't realize what that information is because it's not scientific evidence. We've got a couple people in this room. Libby Pigman did the most incredible presentation for our commission that I've seen done in a long time. Our editor of our local newspaper, Katrina Elskin, has done an incredible amount of research, and that takes a long time. Bringing people up to speed is what's actually going on here, and I have tremendous respect for these people, those especially that do that. What we have to do, my dad used to say, meetings, you go, you meet, eat, and retreat, but yet at the end of the day, nothing gets done. So what we have to do is we have to start it at the level on the bottom and start working up and bringing solutions. So I think I had the honor of talking with Mr. Bergeron for almost a half an hour on the phone, and we're going to meet. He's going to come up. I'm going to share some ideas I have with him because I think he definitely, I know he does, wants to see this problem solved. So this is what I'm working towards, and to sit back and like you mentioned before, throw blame, it doesn't do any good. It just causes more angst. And again, we talk about the problem, but the problem doesn't get solved. So I think this is so exciting to me to see this many people come from different counties to offer their assistance, and let's figure out how to fix this thing. And there's ways to fix it, you know, and this engineer agreed with me. He said that's a good start because once you get rid of the silt, then we can start to repair the lake because the grasses slow the water down. All right, now, because I live right on the Kissimmee River, I've already seen the result of the reconfiguration because it comes out right of my house. I can look down now and I can see speckled perch and I can see fish nesting, you know, right at the bottom. It's about 6 feet deep. Well, it was. So that shows it's working because, you know, what Mother Nature puts out there, when man gets involved, we can really screw things up. You know, so that's what we have to do. We have to go back and look at what Mother Nature intended. There was a reason for it, and start to work in that direction. Right. We're not going to slow down the populations coming into Florida because it's a beautiful place to live. The more the weather gets miserable up north and people age, they want to get out of that snow and ice and they want to come south and enjoy our love bugs.
Yes, sir.
You know, so I think that's what we have to do.
Yes, sir.
So I promised our Chairman Terry Burrows that I would not take more than 59 or 60 minutes, so I want to cut it short to give everybody a chance. But I look forward to working with everybody, and everybody that showed up, thank you so much for your concern that we can fix this. We're better than this.
Thank you.
We all work together.
Thank you, Mr. Culpepper. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to move into the public comment portion of the meeting now. I would like to start with a friend of mine that's worked for 3 congressional members, 7th generation Floridian, and just a wealth of knowledge. Mr. Layton, if you'd go ahead and start us off, I'd greatly appreciate it, sir. The Chief of Staff for Congressman Brian Mass, Steve Layton.
Are you a chairman? Are you a mayor? Are you a commissioner? What are you this week?
I'm just KT. Get it done.
Got it.
All right.
Thank you all for having us, and more importantly, the congressman obviously is in Washington this evening. I think it was about 11 years ago, Commissioner, that we sat when I worked for a guy by the name of Thomas Rooney in your district, and we went through the Lures schedule and what each county wanted and what their requests were and how they wanted to go about putting all this together that we are under the guidance of today with the Army Corps. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what we are under today is what each of the counties agreed upon in 07 and 08. Is that correct?
We had comments into that. Yes, sir.
At that time, and I'm just basing this on this flyer that I have that the congressman received, he was in Afghanistan fighting for our country, not looking to play games with the future of this community. Stand by just a minute. And what's more important is the takeaway that I've heard from each county this evening in working together, but more importantly, the additional counties that we said in 07 and 08 needed to be involved in this because of the headwaters and because of those counties north of this particular county, Lake Okeechobee. The Lieutenant Colonel brought up multiple issues with the high-level lake water due to hurricanes, floods, disasters, death. Unfortunately, my great-great-grandmother is in that cemetery at Port Miaca. I just happen to be one of those generational people who have been here like many of you all. Martin County wasn't Martin County then. It was actually Miami-Dade and a portion of Okeechobee County. So being mindful of historic times and historic issues, I think working together is one thing, but the same rhetoric and the same conversation took place 10 and 11 years ago. So if this is the generation of elected officials that are going to move things forward and get working together, as Commissioner McKinley said, I would highly encourage you guys to do that. I think it's been spoken by the governor. It's been spoken by the congressman. There's a clear roadmap of where we are today and where we're going. I don't know exactly who said it, but reaching back out to your communities and having them work together and understanding the true issues that are taking place, not handing out stuff like this is a start to the whole solution. One of the commissioners says they don't even hear from their federal agencies. Let us know, and I can assure you that Brian Mast will be there. If it's the West Coast, if it's in Jacksonville, if it's in Panhandle, or in the Florida Keys, he will be there. Whoever your representative is, he'll reach out to them, and he'll bring them with you, or bring them with him. It's ridiculous that there isn't a federal person there to speak with you all. And more importantly, I think what the misconception of Brian Mast is the fact that he has been reaching out to a number of farmers. We had a great conversation about 3 weeks ago here with a number of very large landowners. Commissioner was there on another meeting that we had. So it's not all doom and gloom about Brian Mast or the governor. We understand that the fishing and the guiding and the duck hunting and the things that truly drive the economy in this region, they're the same for us, just in a different area, East Coast or West Coast. Whether it's fishing in our lagoon, our Indian River, duck hunting in those canals, we understand it as well. And I've heard a lot about just Martin County, but there's a number of counties that have not and do not have a voice here tonight. So if we can put a lot of that anger behind us and have this conversation in a way that Carson and I have dialogue, which is very unique because he's a unique guy in and of itself, let's start tonight. And let's start in a big way and remove this from the conversation and have somebody who truly wants to come to the table and make it work. I'm sure, because I know he's listening and he's texting me, he would say a lot more this evening in probably a different manner. But I can tell you that in working for multiple members of Congress, there's nobody that has more passion about our environment in the state of Florida, not the 18th district, but the state of Florida, more so than Brian Mast. And so with that, Commissioner, I thank you for acknowledging us. If there's any group, if there's a landowner, or if there's anybody in this audience that wants to meet with him, I can assure you he will meet with you. He will come out here. He will meet with all of you. Reach out to us. We want you to hear from him as well as the scientists on both sides of this conversation as to why the 10.5 foot is there. Not because he pulled it out of a hat. It was put in by these communities and these commissioners. Not these commissioners, I take that back. Individuals that were representing those communities at the time. So thank you again, and I'll be here if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Layton. Appreciate it. Do we have any speaker cards so that I can read from that list? Ms. Hunter, I don't know, anyone? Or are there any other members from the public? Raymond Iglesias? Raymond Iglesias, hop up there. A little home cooking right there, Lieutenant Colonel.
Raymond Iglesias, I'm the co-founder of AFLO, Anglers for Lake Okeechobee. I'd like to thank Melissa McKinley for combating the misinformation on Brian Mast's page of Lake O facts. When I read your facts, I know they're truthful. Mr. Layton, you mentioned about not having any rhetoric. Every other day on Brian Mast's page, all he talks about is misinformation on Lake Okeechobee. I want y'all to understand something. Several times tonight, you heard the phrase, slow the flow, and we must do that. Because over 95% of the water that enters Lake Okeechobee, the liquid heart of the Everglades, and if we don't take care of it, the Everglades will die, just like Lake Okeechobee is doing right now. But every other day he goes on there to talk about Lake Okeechobee's water. Well, guess what? That 95% of the water coming down the Kissimmee is the water we're sending to the east and west coast, and we don't want to do that. But quit saying it's Lake Okeechobee's water, because it's not. Thank you.
Okay, guys, ladies and gentlemen, if we could, I'd like to keep the issue tonight. Ms. Pipes, feel free. I'd like to keep the issue tonight to the issue and just really avoid singling out anybody as much as we can. I understand it's an open mic, but let's be respectful of the process. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'm going to ignore that a tiny bit.
Nyla Pipes, One Florida Foundation, and I happen to be a coastal resident who lives over there in Bryan, Mass. District. And Brian and I have had many, many conversations, and the problem is he's not listening to the science, and he is cherry picking. And I have told him that many times, and I've asked him many times, publicly and privately, to clarify if he has adjusted his push for 10.5 feet year after year, based upon the science from Paul Gray with Audubon, Florida, who says every 10 years is probably good, but we really need to look at like 12 feet on that low level. So there's my clarification on that. Beyond that, to address all of the conversation you guys have been having, it is fantastic that we look to how we work together, how we get past the rhetoric, and I appreciate Commissioner McKinley's comments about also working in our backyard, because people want to make these false comparisons between what we're trying to do with this very large ecosystem and the competition, say, when you bring up a wastewater treatment spill or a septic tank. And what I want to drive home is you guys are on the right track. It's not either or, LACO discharges or septic tanks. It's both and it's all. So anything you guys can be doing, I like to tell people we have to walk, talk, chew gum, and carry our groceries at the same time. So keep it up, and I love seeing you all in the same room because this is the way forward. And being really honest and trying to work together is going to take getting rid of some of that animosity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nyla. Ladies and gentlemen, she really doesn't need an introduction. Someone that I had the privilege of serving with for a number of years, resident of Hendry County, lifelong resident of our area, Commissioner Janet Taylor. Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, and I would like to just say good evening to you, and this is a dream that I've had for years, to see the commissioners work together. Thank you, Doug, for coming out to visit us on invitation, and I go to their commission meetings. But my name is Janet Taylor, and Carson has already introduced me. I live in Clewiston, Florida. I've served that community on the Henry County Commission for 22 years. But I'm here tonight representing Glades Lives Matter, which sent you all those posters that you got in your hands. From our perspective, it seems like every Lake Okeechobee proposal by the coastal activists is mean-spirited and meant specifically to punish our communities here in the Glades. Not fix the lake, but punish the people. As if we are somehow expendable. As if our lives and our communities and our pursuit of happiness somehow matters less. So as you study, deliberate, and hopefully pray on what to do about Lake Okeechobee, I would humbly and with great respect like to leave you with 3 very brief messages. First, to our critics, those who shouted us from far away, who threaten our security and our livelihoods, and who attempt to belittle our way of life, try and understand the people who live here. We are for the country, but we are not unlearned. Don't mistake our good manners for weakness. We are not at all interested in negotiating the terms of our surrender. Choking off our water supply or blowing up our dike or driving us for our homes, well, that's not going to work. This is our home, and we're not going anywhere. Second, to you, the policymakers, in your deliberations, please always consider the people who live here. There's a deep and powerful connection with the lake and the people who live here. There are lives and livelihood tied to this lake. There are families and communities whose survival depends on this lake. Your decision will have generational consequences. Third and finally, to our friends and neighbors on the coast, we can do this together. We can solve these problems without having to take jobs or rob South Florida of drinking water. We can solve these problems without destroying businesses and families and communities. We can solve these problems without feeding hate or resorting to bullying and intimidation. And we can solve these problems as brothers and sisters committed to this common cause. But we cannot solve this problem without a little understanding from people in these coastal ivory towers. As Dr. King has said, we may all have come here in different ships, but we're in the same boat now.
Amen. Amen.
You are going to have to listen to us and deal with us fairly, with respect, and as equals. For this to work, you're going to have to come to the understanding that Glades lives matter just as much as anybody else's. So we thank you. We pray that whatever comes out of this meeting tonight will benefit every county here and the whole of South Florida. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Y'all, Mr. Tucker, just 1 second. Me telling Ms. Taylor that she has to stop at 2 minutes is like, it's illegal. It's against the rules. It's the Sunshine Law. So, but I do want y'all to be mindful, please, if we can monitor the 2-minute time limit, because there's a herd of humans that want to speak. Mr. Tucker, go ahead.
I used to be an auctioneer, so I can get 2 minutes, 5 minutes of info in 2. So,
Make it happen, Captain.
It's good to have everybody here. My name's Brandon Tucker. I'm a third-generation resident from around Lake Okeechobee. I've had the privilege of growing up in this community, graduated from this high school in 1993, and I've had the privilege of spending my entire adult life in Martin County for the last 23 years. These county commissioners for Martin County, for those of you that don't know them, I can tell you that they are good people. They are friends. I voted for every single one of them. I hope that doesn't hurt you in your next election. But they understand the issues. They know what's going on, and I appreciate their service along with the county commissioners here in Okeechobee, my hometown, and all the hard work that you do when it comes to dealing with Lake Okeechobee issues. I also spent the last 2 years serving on the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District. It was a great honor to do that. I've been deep down the rabbit hole in the water wonderland and understand up close and personal the issues that we're dealing with. I think many of you have heard my position on this lowering the lake to 10.5 feet. It's a very bad idea for many, many reasons that many of you know here today. Having the privilege of my children rowing on the South Fork of the St. Lucie River 6 days a week, my family owning property on the South Fork of the St. Lucie River, my business based in Okeechobee County, I have a unique perspective because I'm affected in many, many ways when we have these algae outbreaks and these issues. We have to do all we can do to protect Lake Okeechobee. Listen to the science. There's great science out there that's already been established. Let's keep the politics, no offense, but let's keep the politics out of this. I know you have to do your role and play your job, but we should not be, let me be clear about this. I was called out today in an article by a United States congressman, won't call names, that I made comments about that I would oppose lowering the lake before the wet season. If you'll go to the October 11th, 2018 meeting, it's on youtube.com, South Florida Water Management District channel. Go to the October 11th governing board meeting at 1 hour and 29 minutes. Play it for a couple of minutes and listen to the truth of what I actually said. It is not what I said. What I said is, in a nutshell, that if the science supports a certain level, that in God and His sovereignty decides to not send rain, and the lake gets lower than 11 feet, Audubon has said that that is good for the lake at times because it does help the submerged aquatic vegetation. I've been on the lake with Scott Martin. I've been on the lake with Dr. Paul Gray. I understand that. But unnaturally, politically forcing the lake to a determined level, we are not God and we don't know when He's going to send rain. And to do that is dangerous for not just the residents of the lake, it's dangerous for the northern estuaries, it's dangerous for all of South Florida. And I ask all of you in the leadership roles that you serve to please understand that and to please listen to the science, adhere to the science. This will be a very, very simple situation, ladies and gentlemen, if we can just keep the politics and the rhetoric out. So I thank all of you for your service. I know that you will make the right decisions. God bless.
Thank you very much. Pastor Reese from Belle Glade, home of the Mighty Raiders and the Glades Day Gators.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm Robert Reese. I represent Representative Tina Polsky. She really wanted to be here this evening, but she's still wrapping up some things in Tallahassee. And so she just asked that I would read a letter that she read to the Colonel Kelly earlier into the records to know where she stands in reference to the Lake Okeechobee. But I also want to make a personal comment. I'm so pleased to see all of these counties coming together, talking with each other, and working together to find solutions, scientific solutions to the problem of Lake Okeechobee. But she said, Dear Colonel Kelly, the residents of my district, which includes the cities of Belle Glade, South Bay, Pahokee, in Palm Beach County, are in grave danger if the Army Corps engineer proceed with a plan proposed by Congressman Brian Mast to keep the level of the Lake Okeechobee as low as 10.5 feet. My family and I have lived in Palm Beach County for more than a decade, and like my constituents, I want to restore and protect our environments from the toxic blue algae that plagued our waterways for most of the last year. However, we cannot do so at the expense of the residents, the homes, and businesses of my district. We must pursue science-based solutions that can measurably improve our environment without putting our people in serious risk. Lowering the level of the lake to such extreme would create drought-like conditions throughout Palm Beach County, which would impact every aspect of the life of the residents, business, and wildlife in the area. The lack of water supply will impact our city's abilities to provide water to their residents for basic services like drinking and fire and rescue. It would inhibit the growth ability for our growers to water their crops, impacting our domestic food supply and increasing food prices nationwide. Large boats will not be able to travel in the Rim Canal safely, and dry lake beds, which results in oxidizing soil, muck fire, could cause long-term harms to our fish and wildlife. Just 8 years ago, we got a glimpse of what life would be like under conditions in 2011. The drought brought the level of the Lake Okeechobee so low that gravity could not pull water south for irrigation and drinking. The condition forced the city of West Palm Beach to buy water from the county and shut off basic functions and limit the availability of waters in the residency. We cannot knowingly impact such conditions on this region again. Instead, we must pursue science-based solutions that can measurably improve our environment without putting everything else, including our very environment and wildlife we're trying to save, at serious risk. Sincerely yours, Tina Polsky, State Representative, District 81. And again, I'm thankful to you, and I'm looking forward to the 16 counties coming together to come up with a science-based solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. J.P. Sasser, former mayor of the city of Pokey. No, go ahead and start. Let Raymond work on it.
Let's forget about fishing. Let's forget about farming. Let's forget about all of that. The last drought that we had, the city of Pahokee was getting its water from Lake Okeechobee. We were sucking air. South Florida Water Management District spent the tune of about $750,000 moving our water thing out further into the lake so that we could get water. If that didn't happen, we would have been completely out of water. The other city, which was just briefly mentioned, was the city of West Palm Beach, was less than 2 weeks of running out of water. You can go back to that time, and the Palm Beach Post did a big spread. The richest city in Palm Beach County is in the same boat as the poorest city in Palm Beach County. No water, okay? So having said that, tonight was beautiful. I am so glad that we're working together. We've always worked together. The problem is not us. The problem is Washington. Since all of this has happened, the money from Washington to fix this has been woefully lacking. State of Florida and taxpayers of Florida have had to do what we can to step up to the plate, and I pat us all on the back for what we've accomplished. Leaving you with that, the farmers south of the Lake Okeechobee have invited Congressman Mast repeatedly to come and tour and visit, and he has not returned a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sasser. Mr. Cook, before you begin, Mr. Cook, I served with you on RAC.
It used to be RAC, Carlson.
I love you to death. Please observe the 2-minute limit, my man. 120 seconds. I don't think that's in your DNA, but try to work with us.
Yeah, believe me, I won't take over 2 minutes. Newton Cook, President of United Waterfowlers of Florida. and a member of RAC for many, many years. In fact, the old Lake Okeechobee RAC, which we formed right after the terrible storms in 2005, and when Lures 2008 was designed, and I was involved in that. And I can tell you people right now that Lures 2008 took about 3 years to put together. It's not a simple business, and anybody that comes in with the one-trick pony idea to set a basic number on the bottom of the lake, they have no clue of what's going on when you manage this lake. I've been doing this about 2002. I've been through 3 of this wonderful lady here, the Lieutenant Colonel. I've been through a half dozen governing boards at the Water Management District, and I can tell you right now it's complicated, and Mother Nature has it. And I want to tell you this right now, 10.5 feet, taking that lake down every year, should go down every 5 years. We need that. Will ruin the lake, the heart of the Everglades. You're going to end up with a mud hole with a bunch of willows around the edges. And if you don't believe me, just go out there and look at all the other places in this state where they've drained the lakes down to low levels. Now, I'm a duck hunter. 10.5 feet's great for me, but I put my best interests aside. I also live in Tequesta. I hunt in the Indian River Lagoon. I mean, fish in the Indian River Lagoon. Well, you can hunt. You have to go further north, though. Round Island, don't let anybody know about that. But anyway, you cannot take Lake Okeechobee down to a drought level every year without totally devastating the lake. And I'm not worried about water supply. I'm telling you, I worry about Lake Okeechobee. It's the heart of the Everglades. And the problem we have is it's people with simple ideas. They come in here who don't know a damn thing about managing this part of the country, and they all of a sudden get power, and it creates a great havoc. I'm sorry. I'm a big supporter of the congressman. But on this, he's got bad information coming from people who have agendas that are not for the estuaries or Lake Okeechobee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Be mindful of the time. We're 20 minutes away from closing time. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Gary Goforth. I'm a professional engineer. I've had the honor of practicing in the state of Florida for over 30 years. I've worked with the Corps of Engineers, South Florida Water Management District. I love to hunt in Okeechobee County. I fish in Okeechobee County. I live in Martin County. This is an issue of water supply. Since Lords has been under operation, the Corps has discharged over 3 trillion gallons of water, wasted over 3 trillion gallons of water to the estuaries and Lake Worth Lagoon. It would have supplied 90% of the water supply to Miami-Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County. That has got to stop. You talk about 5,000 acres of submerged vegetation in the lake. I wish, as a fisherman on the St. Lucie estuary, that I could see 5,000 acres of seagrass. We have no seagrass in the estuary since these discharges. We also share a common bond between Martin County and Okeechobee County, courtesy of the blue-green algae, the toxic algae that the lake has provided. We have twice the national rate of dying of liver disease, of having liver transplants. So thank you. And I really want to get the state of Florida on record as failing the citizens for allowing the continued pollution of Lake Okeechobee. And that has got to stop. And I'm very hopeful that the new governor, the new Water Management District Governing Board, Drew Bartlett, will go a long way to cleaning up Lake Okeechobee that we all so desperately love. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goodford, for your comment.
Scott Kelly, I'm the Assistant City Administrator for West Palm Beach, and what I'd like to talk a little bit about tonight is talking about over the next few years and how we apply lures. The damage has already been done this year in regard to lowering the lake, I really want to give a cautionary tale about what happened in 2000 and 2001, because in 2000, the lake was lowered to 13 feet. It was supposed to, the forecast, and with all due respect, the weather forecast for that summer was above average rainfall. It didn't rain that summer. By 2001 in the spring, the lake hit a record low of 8.97 feet at the time. So, as we talk about weather forecasting, it's inexact science. I do not think that we should put all our eggs into that basket. And in the future, in the next few years, I think we ought to all confer. I feel that there really wasn't a lot of discussion about this with the scientists in regard to how we applied lures this year. And I really feel like we ought to all work together, and I'm talking about all the counties and municipal governments in this area, to ensure that we don't go down this route next year or the following year. I mean, it's too late this year. What's going to happen is going to happen. But I don't want to repeat this again. So I would just encourage all of us to try to work together so that we don't end up in a situation that puts us at such tremendous risk. The damage that could be done, I wasn't in West Palm Beach in 2011, but I heard all about it, obviously, and it was not a pretty sight. Since that time, the city of West Palm Beach has invested tens of millions of dollars to drought-proof our system. But we never anticipated, with all the extensive modeling we've done, and we've looked at the historic record, we never anticipated that artificially the lake would be lowered. And so it's put all of our modeling and all of our investments at risk unnecessarily, in my opinion. And so I really feel like we, as all local governments, should be working together to ensure that this doesn't occur again in the next few years.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. You all, we're going to cut it to 1 minute if we can't adhere to the 2 minutes, okay? I hate to penalize the others, but go ahead.
Not a problem. My name is Mike Circus. I am the chairman of the Martin County Young Farmers and Ranchers. I actually timed this speech to 3 minutes, and now we're cut down to 2, so I'm going to kick it into high gear.
Let's go.
For those who can't keep up, Ed Campy's going to have me a copy right here. All right. Today I rise to speak about the lowering of Lake Okeechobee. More importantly, the misdirection this quote solution is to our growing distribution and water conveyance issues. Florida is the third most populated state in the union and still growing, with over 300,000 people coming to our state on a daily basis. To put that number into perspective, today we are in the heritage-rich city of Okeechobee. If everybody moving into our state decided to live right here in cattle country, this city would double in size by the end of Sunday service. Florida has a problem. We just can't sustain this rate. We provide over 75% of the winter fruits and vegetables for the United States of America. We are a leading producer of cattle and livestock. We don't have any hurt for honey. We have no hurt and no want for milk. Quite frankly, our issue is that we just have generational lack of desire to keep up with our infrastructure. Not only that, we have a historical lack of effort to curtail the hyper-urbanization along our coast as well as central cities, namely Orlando. Now, what does that have to do with tonight's meeting? Well, it's quite simple. As we talk about the lowering of Lake Okeechobee, this becomes not only a small part of the pie, but an ever-decreasing part of the solution. Lowering Lake Okeechobee does not address the lack of storage water north of Lake Okeechobee. It does not address the fact that we don't have water conveyance to send all that water from the north all the way down into the Everglades, nor does it address the fact that the majority of our nutrient loads coming from local basin runoff. So essentially we have ourselves two different decisions. We can lower the lake on a yearly basis, which achieves almost nothing, or what we can do is take a look at our infrastructure. We can start taking a look at our septic systems, we can take a look at our failing sewer systems, and we can start developing more stormwater treatment areas. And when I say stormwater treatment areas, I'm not just talking about Martin, St. Lucie, and Okeechobee counties. I'm talking about up to the north. We need to look at local water storage. The fact of the matter is, Florida used to be a giant pond, a giant marsh, and now we're nothing but concrete. So until we find ways to keep our water where we receive it and have a proper distribution system to the south where it needs it, what we're going to do is find ourselves in the same problem year after year. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
What was that, about 125?
No, sir, more than that. That's okay. Go away.
Wish I could do what that guy just did.
Try.
Thank you. I'll be as brief as I can. My name is Ryan Rossi, and I am the director of the South Florida Water Coalition. Our primary objective, and we're based in Palm Beach County, but our primary objective is to go around and educate the public on the health and safety of our water. We are very concerned about the issue with Lake Okeechobee, and I can tell you that of all the residents I've spoken to, the number one theme that they mention is that they wish that there was cooperation, and the people of Palm Beach County are going to be very happy to see all of you here tonight working together, and certainly our Palm Beach County commissioners. I've also had the chance to meet with a lot of our elected officials, many up there as well. to talk about this. I spoke directly with Congresswoman Frankel, and as soon as I started to talk about the drought issues that we faced here in West Palm Beach, specifically, she said, "You can stop talking," because I was the mayor. So I know all about that firsthand. This is a real issue. It is real for the people that live in South Florida, and that's primarily what our objective is. We don't want to see a drought. We know that our emergency management had issues back in 2011. The world is hotter now. A drought is going to be more severe. It's going to be more severe for all of us. So this coalition's purpose is to try to bring and forge partnerships with all of you, and mainly with our residents and you as well, so that we can work together to solve this issue in a responsible way, because what we're hearing right now out of Washington is not responsible. And I'll just leave you with this. I went to Tallahassee 2 weeks ago. There are representatives on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, who released a joint letter, and I'll just quote it real briefly. "As the lake's level approaches 10 feet, water can't flow south. This flow is vital to South Florida's environment and ecological health, population, and economy. Lowering the lake to the proposed level could create drought conditions, which will have vast and potentially dire implications. All stakeholders," that's all of you, all of us, "must come together and work to solve our state's water issues. We urge you to consider all possible consequences of this action and halt the lowering of Lake Okeechobee's level." I am very proud of all of you for coming together to do that, and I hope we can work together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi.
Good evening. My name is George Cooper. I was born and raised in South Dade County. Lived here all my life, which is quite up there a ways, now at 82. And I've seen most of this and been part of it or been at meetings about it. And the thing that you got to understand is you got to take all of it in. There's the environmental side of it. There's the farming side of it. There's the business side of it. You got to understand all of that, because those parts of it are so important to people. The best farmland in the world is at Belle Glade. The muck down there is the richest farmland that you can find in the world. And it grows sugar cane cheaper, better than anywhere else in the world. Okay? That's what it does. And yes, it's not a whole lot of people. It's not a whole lot of voters. It's a whole lot of workers, a whole lot of employees, a whole lot of businesses down the road that benefit and make a living off of that. It's important to them. And it needs to be important. Economy like that needs to be important to all of the community. We need to think about it and understand it and try to keep it running. I don't know whether you'll get it all done, because those things aren't necessarily important with people that live downtown Miami or Orlando in the middle. You know, it's hard to make that important to them and to the representatives and the politicians that are voting on this sort of stuff. But we need to. That's who you need to talk to. You need to get that done in order to stabilize that. And like I say, it's a beautiful, most productive piece of farmland anywhere in the world, sitting right there at the south end of the lake. We need to keep it there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper.
Hi, my name is David Aycock, and my father built a house in Buckhead Ridge in Glades County in 1968. I was 3 years old, and I've seen the lake change dramatically in my lifetime. I'm a sportsman, but at the same time, I respect the farmers. What I don't respect or have grown tired of is the consistent mistakes that continue to affect our lake. The first really big one was the Kissimmee River Restoration Project. They poured a bunch of herbicide up there to try and get the water to flow properly. It spilled down into the mouth of Lake Okeechobee, and it wiped out all the hydrilla and most of the vegetation in the area. After that, the next year, the ducks didn't show up, and the fish have been starting to struggle ever since. Now, this year's spec season is a great example of fish struggling. They're struggling simply because there's no vegetation in the lake anymore. And taking it down to 10.5 feet means we'd have to grow a whole new group of or area of vegetation. Before Irma, we created another artificial drought, and I know because living in Buckhead, I have the summer rain. I know how much water is going in, and I know it's all being let out. The big problem that Irma produced was we dried out all this mud all over the lake, and then it just so happened the predominant wind during that storm was out of the south, and it blew all that dried up. What happened was the lake came up quick, all that mud aerated, was already aerated, it floated, and then it went to the north end of the lake, and now what we have is chocolate out there, along with very limited vegetation. I would love to see the vegetation brought back into the lake, and I believe that if you keep it at 10.5 feet, you're missing a vast area that runs from the Buckhead Ridge area, actually Eagle Bay, all the way down to the south end of the lake on the west side, and that is all vegetation that could filter water. Why aren't we utilizing it? And as for STAs, if we're going to put STAs in,
Sir, you can go ahead.
Glades
Close her
County,
up. Go
okay.
ahead. Yep.
It would be a great idea to have that and the revenue generated from it. Unfortunately, as a longtime duck hunter, the only ducks I got this year were at STA 3, 4, and 5. What happened? We got to bring it back.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Ahart.
it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. My name is Susan Gibbs Thomas. I'm the mayor of Indiantown. And we are Florida's newest municipality. We sit on the very banks of the St. Lucie Canal, the C-44. We are home of the C-44 reservoir. It borders and surrounds Indiantown on our east and northeast sides. So the C-44 is important and vital to Indiantown. Besides myself, Indiantown's council is in attendance this evening because this issue is vital to our community as well as all the communities represented in this room. I had not planned on speaking, but I am compelled because it is encouraging to me to see the multiple governing bodies willing to sit down together to address the issues and respond to the science and facts and not react with a knee-jerk reaction to issues. I agree with Martin County Chairman Campy in reframing the thinking from adversity to being mutual beneficial and working together. And being here this evening, hearing each board's willingness to move forward together is a start. I thank each of you for that and count us in. Thank you.
Good evening, Alicia Parento. I live in unincorporated Martin County. I just wanted to share some information. I was at a chamber meeting a couple months ago, and a gentleman made a presentation, and it was compelling as to why the lake should not go to 10.5. Because there are 10 performance standards, performance measures, and only one of them did it come as average. All the rest were worst performers. The current LORS 08 is adequate, and I think that should be considered for the next 2 years, or next 3 years until the project is complete in 2022, and then go back to the WSE performance measures, because those actually were the best performers. Keeping in mind that our droughts in 1980, when the lake was at 15.46, a year, that's in June. The following year was 9.79. And so 10.5 is dangerous. You don't want to go there. In 2000, 2006, and 2010, where the target stage was 12.5, the following summer, the lake was down to 8.97, 8.82, and 9.53. So Congressman Mast has done well for his constituents, but it is not fair or beneficial to everyone concerned around the lake. I hope that you as commissioners will speak to the legislation, to the governor, and have more pull than just the one congressman who's elected to one small portion of the state.
Thank you, ma'am, very much.
My name's John Helfrich, and this is my wife, Tracy. We live in Okeechobee County on the Kissimmee River.
You still only get 2 minutes.
It's a little more long-winded.
We work for River Forest Yachting Center, which she works at the one that's located in Martin County, and I work at the one that's located in Glades County. Since the lake has gone down to, 11.2, I think it was, over the past several weeks, there's a lot of boats that travel the Okeechobee Waterway. Our yacht yard is very large. We store boats up to about 90 feet in air-conditioned buildings, very high-end boats. And
the Army Corps hears from us often, so they know me by name.
And we do a lot of repairs. Well, most of the repairs I'm getting is because the lake is so low, and I've got 60 and 70-foot boats coming across the Okeechobee Waterway with banged-up props. They come in sinking. I mean, each one of these repair jobs ranges from $10,000 to $50,000. Well, that's not the repair work I'm in business to do. I'm in business to do yacht storage, climate-controlled storage, and servicing boats. These people that come through are not going to travel the Okeechobee Waterway because they know they're going to tear their boat up. So it's damaging our business. I know over at her place, the boats can't even tie up to the seawall because the water is so low, they're sitting on the bottom. So I've been in front of Mr. Ahern quite a bit trying to expand my business. I'm building a third building, which is 300 by 175 feet with a 30-foot door. It's in process. It's almost done. But I'm worried about filling it now if the lake stays at these levels.
But it's not just about our business, it's about the economy. All these people who have big boats are spending money all over, all of the other businesses.
Yep.
And I did email Mr. Mast and have met him personally and socially, and he couldn't be bothered to email me back.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Clayton Humphreys. I'm a seventh generation from around the lake. First, I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, hearing what we have to say, and being here for us. It was brought up tonight, a couple of things I'm sure we already knew. I want to talk about some things that maybe what we can do. Everybody's brought up Orlando. Even Disney was mentioned, and not anything against you. Everything you said was great to the point. Disney has actually implemented one of the most state-of-the-art human waste treatment facilities in the world. They're using the waste from their properties every day to create fuel for their generators that run some of their properties. They're running completely green on it. And they're also looking at putting that in their buses. We sent a man to the moon 50 years ago this year, and we still don't have a better solution for what we're doing with our waste. Maybe we could look at spending some of the money we have on doing something like that in our counties. Let's look at maybe a greener solution so that we're not putting waste where it can be run off into our water. I think that we could all use Disney as an example, though I'm sure that some of their money goes to places I wouldn't care for. But also, I wanted to say that it seems to be a great effort for mutual resolve here tonight. A lot of the communities that are in this are here. I don't feel like the people in these communities feel that way when they go to the coast. For one, I've seen it where people have said that it's your fault, you've done this is what you do, this is why we can't go in the water, it's their fault. I'd love it if we could try to have a meeting like this that talks about our unity on the coastal communities. Let those coastal community people see us come together like this. Let us change their mind by unity. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Lee Simons. I'm from LaBelle. I grew up on the Clushatchee River
and swimming in Lake Okeechobee, so I know the area. I cut my teeth first on AFA, a Phenomon Flossackwae, is a type of algae, the Upper Klamath Lake. So a very similar situation that we have here. So the difference between this type of AFA and, or this type of algae and the type of algae that I saw in Oregon was that the blue-green algae in Oregon was edible. So basically a similar property. It would lay on the top of the surface, it would die and move through the water column and absorb all of the oxygen out of the water column. Then the fish would die, kill. Mass fish kills is why the USGS had funding for that project. It's been going on about 15 years. So what they figured out was the Bureau of Reclamation came along and they put a weir on the lake, and so the lake couldn't drain into the Keno River. Well, how this applies here is that, well, the C44 canal and the C40 West, what we've done is we've changed the cross section, and we have no way to get the oxygen in the water column. So you guys wanted science. Okay, this is why we're having the problems on the coastal areas, is we're dumping large volumes of basically dead water, anoxic water that's hyper-nutrients from all the different sources that everybody's mentioned today, septics and farm runoff. Okay, we're putting that into a low-energy environment, and it doesn't rinse out. So the other problem that I'm having with the C44 and C43 canal releases is that the water that flows into the tribal area, into the Everglades National Park, that's all permitted water. The water that's flowing out to the east and west, it's not permitted. Okay, so basically the Corps of Engineers are undoing all of the permitting and all of the requirements that we put on our water, and they're dumping it to the east and west. Okay, so now that we think if we can isolate that to the problem, what I would propose is that bring in and do a water quality study of that water flowing to the east and west and define it. Is it heavily in?
Go ahead, Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon, you gonna wrap her up?
I'm wrapping up. So we can quantify that data, identify the solution, and it would probably be 10 to 12 years before we're able to start making solutions. So we can use another project, use that other science, and apply it to what's going on here, and we can start extrapolating. So it doesn't take 10 years for the feds to kind of get on the problem, you know what I mean? So in Oregon, what they did is they said, well, the weir was the problem and the dikes were the problem.
Go ahead, sir.
They blew the levels.
5,
Okay.
4.
So anyhow,
3,
a water quality problem,
2,
water quality solution.
Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much. Safe travels back to Hendry County. Ms. Arctic Hammock.
Mr. Turner, thank you so much for having everyone here tonight. And Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds, you've set the bar so high, I'm not sure who they're going to find to send us, but they will not ever measure to your bar. Those of you who are here, our elected officials, have 3 from Glades County. Our farm is in Glades County. It's been there over 100 years. So we have taxation. We have representation here tonight. But where we do not have it is on the South Florida Water Management Board. There is not one person on that board who is directly connected to our inland communities or to ag. I started to ask everybody here tonight who was involved in agriculture to stand up, but then I realized that have to be everybody because, as you said, we all eat. So I'm asking to please fill that vacant seat. Let us have a voice. We were so grateful that we have a voice here tonight, but it's just not right for us not to have a voice on that Water Management District Board. Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Lambert, Everglades Reserve, and I'm here on behalf of the marina in the city of Pahokee. Also do business here in Okeechobee County. And I'm really not here to discuss the science, but I am here to discuss the business and the harm that 10.5 feet has done to the operation at the city of Pahokee, the poorest city, I believe, in the state of Florida, certainly within the county of Palm Beach. Our vessels, including my own 42-foot vessel, are now landlocked. We are trapped in the city of Pahokee Marina. We have, as of last week, 3 foot 6 inches in our entrance channel. We cannot receive boats. The last boat that left there did approximately $30,000 worth in damage in traveling down on Route 2 down to the locks. It's absolutely beyond belief. It's destroying the economy of the city of Pahokee. It's unfair. I would welcome the opportunity to speak with the congressman about this, and on behalf of the boating community and the yachting community, it is completely destroying the marinas, and I see Mary Ann here. I think her marina is having the same issue, and I think it's just grossly unfair from a business perspective what's occurring and what the congressman is proposing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can't do your whole presentation.
We know.
Okay.
We don't get 15 minutes.
No,
Okay.
ma'am, you get 120 seconds.
Okay, so actually, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Turner and Mr. Ahern for inviting us here tonight. We're actually on the FFA Ag Issues team. The rest of them are back there, so you guys could stand up. They actually studied the water quality of Lake Okeechobee, and they're going to be competing in June to actually discuss the issue, and we would love to present to more people, but we don't have time tonight. It was very interesting because we actually focused all of our energy on understanding the water flow from the north and why, we need to talk to Osceola and Orange County because they have such a huge effect on us. And we really took these kids out of their normal life because they live on farms. They live by sugarcane. We live on the Caloosahatchee River. And we took them out of their element, and we made them stakeholders. So, we made Hannah, she had to study what it was like to be an environmentalist. And she had to understand how the Everglades agricultural area is affected. So it was very interesting. We thank you guys. It was actually awesome because I think we now have a new ag issue, which is the lake level. So we now have a new concern. But thank you actually for educating us tonight. And we had a really good time. You guys are full of a lot of knowledge and information, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Mr. Lipish, you will be our last speaker for the night, and then we'll go back into the board. Thank you so much for being here with us as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Carson Turner, you're great. I met you a long time ago, and only someone like you could bring all of these people together. Thank you very, very much. My name's Jackie Thurlow Lipish, and I'm one of the new South Florida Water Management Governing Board members. And I drove from Souls Point tonight because I wanted you all to know how important you are to me and how important you are to Governor DeSantis and to the South Florida Water Management District. And I hope that all of you will come and blend your voices with all of the voices at the district. And I'm listening. I want you to know I'm listening. And I am a protective mother bear of my coast. But I'm a part of you too. My grandfather wrote The Soils of Florida in 1931. And I do believe that all of us will do this together, just like my friend Mayor Dowling Watford told me in 2008. God bless you. Thank everybody, and we're going to improve our situation. Everybody. Thank you.
All right, 120 seconds. 120 seconds. Go.
You bet.
Hurry.
My name is Fred Humphreys. I'm a 7th generation Floridian. I was born and raised in Naples and Everglades. My great-grandfather named Chuck Alusky. My playground was from Marathon to Naples. Then I moved up here after serving some time with United Telephone as electrical engineer and became a haberdasher. So I know all of you folks here in Okeechobee, all the old ones, you all used to come in my store, and I got a very good pulse on what was happening in this county, the same as I had down in the Everglades on Broad River, Losmas River, Little Shark, Big Shark, Chatham Bend, Chatham River. I have a pulse on that. I was raised there. I want you to know that the water level in those areas, in those days, were 2 to 3 feet. And the moon governed the flow of the water, and the salt water table flowed back and forth in those rivers according to the moon and the spring rains. And it's important to understand this because now you're getting ready to face a big project on changing Highway 41, which my grandfather surveyed. So he also killed Watson, on killing Watson. And Toch Brown was my cousin. but that's another story.
Yes.
You just have to understand that where I'm coming from, I'd like to take you to about 30,000 feet and look down on this from 1940s to now.
You have 20 seconds to do all that, sir. Go ahead.
Please let me finish.
No, sir, 20 seconds
Okay.
and we're done.
I know they've been up here and they've listened to everybody. But if you go to the 30,000 feet and look what happened from the 40s to now, mankind has really messed it up. So I'm suggesting that, especially you, Lieutenant Colonel, that look at Highway 41 and use it as a positive. Also, Alligator Alley, which is I-75, use it as a positive. And also, maybe think about putting up a berm along the national park with a lot of weirs to control that floodwaters into those rivers down there.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Humphries. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great night. All right. So, with that, yes, Commissioner Goodred, by all means.
May I?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stand up. I feel like it's my first time hosting Thanksgiving dinner and I'm still sitting at the kids' table.
That's classic.
Basically, what I want to give charge to the gentleman that works for Congressman Mast. Put somebody on that board from agriculture. Put somebody on the South Florida Water Management's Board of Governors from agriculture to represent agriculture's interest. The second largest economy in this state, only surpassed in the early 70s by tourism. My family has been here for over 150 years, farming and ranching. And from Lake City to Broward County before it was Broward County. Oakland Park in 1910. My great-great-great-uncle was the first police chief of the Fort Lauderdale Police Department in 1911. So we go back a long way in agriculture. It means everything to me. It means everything to Okeechobee County, a lot of our other smaller counties. So please ask Congressman Mast if he wants to show us that he wants to be fair and equitable, to have him put somebody, or at least support putting somebody on that board that represents agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Goodred. Commissioner McKinley.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. You know, back in 2009, I'd been a stay-at-home mom and had to go back to work. My very first job interview was with a gentleman named Stephen Layton in Congressman Tom Rooney's office. This man, I went on to work for Senator Nelson. It was not his district. He came out to Pahokee. He helped us advocate on behalf of Congressman Rooney to do dredging. Mr. Lambert, wherever you are, the Pahokee Marina, to try to do that dredging that we're still looking for. He worked very hard. After Congressman Mast was elected, he had the courage to walk into the Lion's Den, and he came out to the Western County Farm Bureau annual dinner and walked around. He went to the Sweet Corn Fiesta, I think, last year and shucked corn with us. He's dragged me out on his boat in the Indian River Lagoon to show me before and after pictures of the Indian River Lagoon. So, Mr. Layton, I want to thank you for being here this evening. It's been a little bit of tension on our friendship over the years, and I appreciate your patience and your diligence. I know you are doing your job, and your job is to represent the congressman. Somebody brought up here tonight, Congressman Mast's constituents. I get a lot of fingers pointed at me because I proudly represent the Everglades agricultural area and the western communities of Palm Beach County. But I also represent the village of Wellington, the village of Royal Palm Beach, the town of Loxahatchee Groves, the new city of Westlake, and a portion of the city of West Palm Beach. All of those areas, aside from Wellington, all of those other cities I mentioned, I also share constituents with Congressman Mast. And I think I did not want this evening to turn into nasty rhetoric towards the congressman, but I do take a little bit of offense when there are comments made that there are commissioners in Palm Beach County who don't know what they're talking about. And I would ask that the message be given to Congressman Mass to remind him that he also represents Palm Beach County, because I think sometimes he forgets that. And so I know that there have been offers here this evening, but on behalf of me as the district commissioner, would invite the congressman to come out and tour. You know, a lot of fingers are pointed at sugar, but you know, we're not big sugar. We're big radish. We're big corn. We're big green beans. We're big sod. I think what else? We're big pepper, big celery.
Big lettuce, big cabbage,
yeah,
big cow.
Lettuce, big cabbage, big basil, yeah, you're a big cow. I don't really have cows.
I own 12. I'm the cattle baron of Hendry County. So.
I have chased horses with Commissioner Turner in Hendry County, but please remember, this isn't an issue. Somebody brought up the term coastal elites and their ivory castles. Look, my great-grandparents moved to Sarasota in the 1930s. You know, I moved there at the age of 6. I won't give you the year. I grew up on the coast. I certainly don't consider myself a coastal elite. My colleagues here tonight are here to tell you that they're here supporting what we're doing because this isn't an agricultural issue. This is a South Florida issue. And we are all worried. We don't want to be put in the face of danger every year wondering if lowering the lake was the right thing to do, because God forbid we should have a year where we're in a drought. And we don't want to face that the same way we don't want to face a Herbert Hoover dike that's not adequately repaired in a Category 5 hurricane heading straight at us. So work with us, please, with your boss. Send a message to him that we want him to come and see Palm Beach County and start talking about Palm Beach County as well. Shared adversity is not sending all the water out the C-51 and blowing out the Lake Worth Lagoon. Shared adversity is all of us stepping up together to make this system work and to improve our community from Orlando south to the Keys. And so I just want to thank you for continuing to be my friend, even though after this you might not be. But for showing up tonight, for taking the heat, for representing your boss, and just let's all work together. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy? A microphone that works, please.
I don't think I need a mic. I can hit you with the... Maybe. Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to give us some focus and some direction on where we need to go forward. I had mentioned earlier that we are all, most of the communities are very fortunate to have professional staff. I'd like to make a recommendation that we have, following this meeting, have our staffs get together and have a similar meeting like this. They're the folks that get the work done. So we'll have our staffs collaborate, and then perhaps either in the late fall, early winter before the holidays, we would invite all of the groups that are here today to come out to Martin County. We can have it in South Martin County, which makes it a little easier for the folks from Palm Beach to come out, and we should have this meeting. If it's a historic night that we all got together, but it can't be a one-shot deal where we all feel good and took pictures and got on the local news, and then we never do this again. So I would make a strong recommendation that we allow our staffs to work together. And I'd thank the staffs, because getting all of these elected officials from the area all in one room on the same day is a pretty Herculean feat. And so I'd like to thank not just Martin County staff, but all of the commission's staff and the folks that are here from other municipalities. It's a wonderful thing. The folks that came, we'd like you to come and visit us in Martin. And we should really put this as a strategy. Now, the difference between the 16-county coalition and what we're doing here tonight is we send one representative from each of the commissions to the 16-county coalition. Tonight, you're getting nearly all of the members of the commission. So we all go home understanding exactly what the mission is. So that would be my recommendation. And thank you for putting it together.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, unless there's any strong objections. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner. Commissioner Berger? Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Thank you, Carson. My commission district does not have a lot of water issues. So what I want to share with you tonight is what I've observed in this last couple of hours. And what I have seen is a community that has huge passion
I can see it. I can feel it. It's in the words that you spoke when you came up to the microphone. And I am proud to sit here with my commissioners. I'm proud that we're here tonight to listen to you. Keep your passion up. That's what will drive everything, and that's what will bring us to a good conclusion at the end of the day someday. So thank you very much for teaching me that tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you so much. Commissioner Ahern?
Yeah, just one thing to follow up. The Moorhaven FFA chapter, they did do a presentation for Henry County Board. They've done it for the city of Moorhaven, which is represented here tonight, and have done it for Glades County. I think they're going to do it for the city of LaBelle on Thursday night, and if anybody has an opportunity to invite them to come and do their program that they're practicing for the state convention, it's very interesting. It's very fair. They look at all aspects and appreciate the job they're doing and helping with the problem that we're working with too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I would challenge you all to do that. It's a great two-way conversation, and you will get something out of it. Anyone else? Any reason why we feel that staffs wouldn't want to get together and have this discussion and try to move this? One thing that the representative did point out to me is I think that we're going to have some solid ideas that come out of another discussion if we can get around the table. He would strongly encourage us to do that well in advance of the legislature going back into committee week in November. So if staff could keep that into consideration. I also want to point out one other item, not to double down on some of the things that my colleague Commissioner McKinley said with regards to us living in the breadbasket of the world as it relates to the United States. But every time I hear the concept of looking at projects north of the lake, what I hear, and it makes my blood pressure go up, is more land being acquired and more land being taken off of the tax rolls of communities that, quite frankly, I'm not trying to pour mouth. I don't like to be that guy always saying we ain't got a dollar to do anything with. But if you look at the entire ad valorem revenue stream for Hendry County is going to create a whopping $15 million this year. We're fired up. I think we may be just right at the $16 million mark. I mean, we're rolling in it, right? And if you take and look at the lands that are on the conservation easement program, and if you were to take those lands and allow them to contribute to the ad valorem revenue, we would have an additional $14 million. So we would go from $15 to $29 million. And so that speaks to Commissioner Ahern and Commissioner Stanley's point, and you will hear this time and time again. And listen, what the Water Management District does with regards to PILT and with other entities that do that, it is the difference in, I think, many of us being able to keep our head above water while we're treading or not. But we're getting to a point where we're at that tipping point, so to speak. I think all of those conversations have to be taken into consideration as we move these other items forward, moving north of the lake. The last thing I want to do is shift an interest from one area to go to another to actually have an adverse effect to that county's bottom line. So I think that's a point that I just wanted to make in closing up here tonight. I also want to encourage everyone to look at the concept of passing a resolution. And then I do want our legal beagles to get together and also discuss why there can't be a letter that comes out of this that compiles all of these comments together and kind of puts it all out there. And then, Stephen, I want you to help us get the Everglades Caucus and the federal delegation down here in Florida to have another giant meeting.
Hey, Carson.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Commissioner Smith.
Just on timing of getting that done, if we can get that accomplished by the time FAC gets together for our water policy meeting, that would be.
Yes, sir. And so that would be sometime between June 11th and 14th, correct? And if we could have that language to be able to be vetted at that water policy conference in Orlando, that would be a big feather in our cap, don't you think? Especially as it moves this conversation forward federally and from a statewide basis.
Well, it also broadens the audience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Because I can guarantee you we're going to have a ton of legislators in that room and cabinet members as well, if I had to bet on it. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. A lot of us have been quiet up here because we've been learning way more than we could offer anything in contribution to the conversation. And I know that the constituents... I know that the constituents in this room and the constituents back in Palm Beach County would appreciate some official board action on behalf of their elected representatives here, and I think just to bring this in for a landing, I'd invite our leader on this issue, Commissioner McKinley, to perhaps offer a motion on behalf of the Palm Beach County Board of County Commissioners to direct staff to take the next step and continue to work with our neighboring counties on this issue, and hopefully we can have all the county commissions here join in their respective motions.
Wonderful.
Without objections, we'll have a motion.
Is that all right? All right, Mayor.
I don't think so.
We have a motion by. I don't think you can do that. Commissioner, Vice Mayor. Oh.
So what we'll do is we'll give staff direction without objections.
That was the attorney coming down
See,
to the front.
our attorneys are right there.
That's why she was here.
So without objections, we'll give staff directions to proceed.
Thank you, Denise.
All right. Thank you for that movement. Yes, sir. Commissioner Burris.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll do the same for the Okeechobee County Commission.
Can't do it.
You have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make the motion.
Without objections.
Without objection.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting stressed.
You're getting stressed? Okay.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion without objection
That's what I was hoping you was going to tell me.
that we direct staff to move forward and working with the other counties.
Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Goodbread. All in favor? Aye. There you go.
I don't think we can do that. And with all due respect, we're in Okeechobee.
Yeah.
He's the chair, but
I think you got sideways quick.
My advice is that we take it up at our commission meeting, and will.
Yeah. Outstanding. Mr. Chair, is that what you'd like to do at the Henry County Board of County Commissioners as well? Commissioners Joshua Jovial as well? Okay, absolutely. Those wild and crazy people in Palm Beach County and Okeechobee, man, they just jump out there and get it done. Gotta love it, baby. Okay. All right. With that, anything else? How about this, you all? We're 8:29. I said it'd be 8:30. I will go ahead and say we're adjourned. Thank you all so much.